Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, April 11th, 2025. I'm Ed Kabik, November 2 Echo Charlie. In the log this week, the SV1GA/A Mount Athos DXpedition is accepted by ARRL for DXCC credit. Radio amateurs of Canada will not attend Hamvention this year. ARRL announces ISS SSTV transmissions for April 11th through 16th for the International Day of Human Spaceflight. We'll discuss MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and take a look at some interesting online radio content. Less than a week after the SV1GA/A team released a statement predicting extensive delays on the DXCC accreditation, the ARRL announced that they determined the DXpedition met the accreditation criteria, and I can confirm that my QSO with SV1GA/A was confirmed, and the DXCC entity for Mount Athos now shows up in my list of entities worked. The ARRL noted that due to the actions taken by the local authorities in the autonomous region in Greece, quote, any future operations made by this team from Mount Athos will require additional documentation for securing accreditation for DXCC credit. This is great news for the 5,965 operators who got in their logs for a total of 13,511 QSOs. The team made 1,903 CW, 634 single sideband, and 10,974 FT8 QSOs during their brief time at Mount Athos. The statement from ARRL can be found in the show notes. Radio Amateurs of Canada, or RAC, the National Amateur Radio Organization of Canada, announced in a press release dated April 8, 2025, that their board of directors voted unanimously to cancel their plans to operate at a booth at this year's Dayton Hamvention. Citing the strained relationship between the U.S. and Canada due to trade disputes and suggestions of Canada becoming a U.S. state by American officials, they announced the cancellation with, quote, deep regret. Calling it a complex and evolving situation, RAC said that it is their hope that they will be able to return to Hamvention in future years, and they hope that Canadian amateurs who do attend the event will have a safe and enjoyable experience. The full RAC press release can be found in the show notes. ARRL, or Amateur Radio on the International Space Station, has announced that the International Space Station will be transmitting slow-scan television, or SSTV, signals to commemorate the International Day of Human Spaceflight today through the 16th. There will be 12 special images transmitted. If you decode them, they encourage you to send them to the ARRL website at a link in the show notes and apply for an award. Transmissions will be at 145.800 MHz in the PD120 mode, and more information can be found in the show notes. And now let's talk a little bit about some MVARC Nets on the air. As always, on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. On the repeater, we have our FM net, which is immediately followed by our digital net in Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM. Then on Saturdays and Sundays, we have the MVARC Slow Speed Roundtable, starting at 7:30 a.m., usually around 12 to 15 words a minute, and we'll slow down to whatever speed you're comfortable with. And that's followed at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time by the Cherry Trainet on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband. We'd love to have you join us. And now let's take a look at what's happening with DX. There will be a lot of DX on the air the next week. Stations on the air will include Fakarava Atoll, Chichijima Ogasawara Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Koror Island in Palau, Marcus Island, Minamitorishima Islands, Dominica Island, Cayman Islands, Gabon, Mali, Majuro Atoll, Marshall Islands, Solomon Islands, and Antarctica. A calendar of DXpeditions can be found at dxnews.com/calendar. And now a look at the solar activity update. As we go to press, the solar flux index was 158 and the estimated sunspot number was 113. Over the last week, the SFI has decreased. Overall solar activity has been low of late, with geomagnetic field at quiet to active levels. Only C-class flares have been seen recently, with the largest being a C5.3 from region 4060. Solar wind has been slightly elevated due to coronal hole activity. Solar wind has been slightly elevated due to coronal hole high-speed streams, and that elevation is expected to continue through the 13th. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is low at 1%. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are at a predicted probability of 45%. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 5% chance predicted. There's a reasonable chance of 6-meter propagation through the middle of the month, so keep an eye on the band and the spotting clusters to be ready for openings. HF conditions have been favorable overall. and it remains a fantastic time for amateurs of all license classes to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see D-layer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, go to the D-Region Absorption Predictions DRAP page from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And to see real-time maximum musical frequency, or MUF, and critical frequency, or FOF2 data from radiosondes, visit prop.kc2g.com. And now for a look at some upcoming contests. On the contest calendar this weekend, we can look forward to the QRP ARCI's QSO Party and the JIDX CW contest, the SKCC Weekend Sprintathon, the OK/OM DX contest on single sideband, the Yuri Gagarin International DX contest, the IG-RY Worldwide RTTY contest, the DIG QSO Party on CW, the Texas State Parks on the Air, the North Dakota QSO Party, the Africa FT4 DX contest, the International Vintage contest on HF, the Hungarian Straight Key contest, the ARRL Rookie Roundup on single sideband, and the 4 States QRP Second Sunday Sprint. As always, the K1USN SSTs, the MSTs, and the CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now for a look at some online interesting radio content. The Northern California DX Foundation released their latest newsletter. It has tales of DXpeditions and fun on the air. Definitely worth checking out. Also, Steve KM9G took a look at ferrite choices for Ununs. Josh KI6NAZ installed a Meshtastic node on his roof. Steve KM9G did a deep dive on getting FT8 to run on his ICOM IC703. Kevin 2E0 Whiskey Mike Golf took a look at the True SDX for ultralight portable operations. Chuck KK6USY looked at an inexpensive Yagi for 70 centimeters. Ramon EA5IW used a President Lincoln radio for mountaintop portable. Kevin KB9RLW shows how to do multicolor text with your 3D printer in FreeCAD. Walt K4OGO plays with a JPC7 portable antenna. Mike K8MRD took a look at the Res Antenna Systems Scout antenna. George VK2AOE attempts to resurrect a realistic DX160. Dougbo KD7DUG used his QRP Labs QMX for single sideband and CW from San Marcos High Point. Matt M0DQW ventured into LEO satellite work with the Arrow 2 antenna. David Delta Lima 2 Delta November shows off version 4 of his 2-meter and 70-centimeter Moxon antenna. Walt K4OGO announced his new antenna book being published by the ARRL. James Kilo Echo 8 Papa Zulu November tried hunting satellites. Steve KM9G takes a look at a 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. Kevin KB9RLW does a follow-up on the resolution of the ICOM 705 PL tone issue he talked about in an earlier video. And Josh KI6NAZ talks about ham radio versus satellite communications devices. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks, as always, for coming along for the ride. We're glad you're here. For the Mount Vernon Amateur Radio Club and myself, Ed, November 2 Echo Charlie, hope you have a great week ahead. Best 73. We'll see you next week.